Well, g'day everyone, welcome back to the channel. All right, we are at the end of the gardening season. My tomatoes are at the point where it's getting very hard for them to ripen up. So it's about time for them to come out. Now I've picked all the green tomatoes off. I still have a few that are sort of ripening up, so we'll give them a crack and see how they go and try and get a few more ripe ones out of it. But I have 5 kilos of green tomatoes. So for me, that means we go into something that's traditional for my family, which is green tomato pickles. And now I get to use that Ezy Sauce that I showed you much earlier on in the preserving haul video, which I'll throw a link up for that one. So I'm going to use that one and make up some green tomato pickles. So without any further ado, off we go. So we're using our Wild's Ezy Sauce for this one. Now for the most part I'm following the recipe off the website, but this being me, I very rarely follow a recipe to a T. So we have 5 kilos, which is about 10 pounds of tomatoes. Obviously any ones that have got some rough bits, I'm going to trim that off. That one looks pretty much shot. I don't know why I bothered picking that one. So I'll go through, I'll trim off any rough bits, and then I just need to slice them up. The next part's 2 kilos of onions. All the onions I have in the house, I have 1 kilo. So I'll do the first part with the 1 kilo, then I'll have a think about it, and I'll probably grab another kilo tomorrow to throw in there. But yeah, I'm just going to start with the kilo I have on hand. I don't want to nick to the shops this late at night. So I'm not nicking to the shops this late. Okay, now what's not in the recipe, but I'm going to throw in, is some capsicum or peppers. I've also found that zucchini is wonderful to add into the pickles. Just adds an extra notch of flavor to it. So there we go. Now everything needs to be sliced up. Now I'm just going to use my mandolin to do that. Of course, using the top hat to keep fingers away from the blades because I don't want to cut myself yet again on it. So I'll slice everything up and then I'll bring you back after it's all sliced up. Of course, you can use a food processor, you can use a knife. Either one of those options work. When I was 12, if we have a look, just there on my thumb, making these pickles, I managed to cut myself right open with a knife. So yeah, always be careful using sharp objects making this sort of thing. So yeah, I'm gonna go cut it all up and I'll meet you back after it's all sliced up and ready to go. All right, there we go, everything all cut up. Now, as you can see, tomatoes, pretty hard, being a green tomato. Yeah. So that's what the next step is about. So we'll just put in our onions. Okay, as you can see, even with this tub, it's pretty full. All right, so next up we've got half a cup of cooking or a pickling salt. Just going to sprinkle that over. And that will help to macerate everything down, meaning basically to start breaking it down, to start drawing the moisture out, and pulling the solids down. So this will all pack down over time. At the moment it is way too full for me to stir it. It will break down a bit and then I can stir it a bit, probably in the morning. So from here, you want to cover it up. So I'm just going to use that. And the other reason I'm using that glass bowl is because I don't have a lid big enough. So we're using the glass bowl, and then a couple of tea towels. And that will keep it all covered up. And from here, it's just going to go in the fridge, and it needs to sit in the fridge for at least 12 hours. Like I said, in the morning, I'll probably bring it out and give it a stir. Once it's broken down a bit, and I've got some more space in the bowl. All right, catch you back in a bit. All right, folks, here we are. What is actually about 20 hours later, maybe 22. One of those things, just had a busy day, couldn't get back to it. Sitting it for extra time isn't really going to matter. As you can see, it was right up to the brim when I filled it. It's now right down. You can see there's water. I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera or not, but there's all the water that's come out and all the ones that are down in that water, which is going to be a pretty salty brine. It all softened up. Even these ones up here, they've softened up a lot. Lost a lot of the moisture out of them. Gave it a stir this morning just to get that salt incorporated a bit more. All right, so I've got my extra kilo of onions, which it was shy on. Now these, because they haven't been in the maceration, they're not gonna break down as quickly, but they still should break down. I mean, I've got a 2-hour simmer time on it, so I still should get some breakdown on those. Okay, so from here, we're gonna go across, we're gonna put it in my absolutely largest pot, which is actually the one I use as my canning thing. Big aluminium stock pot. Gonna put that in there and bring it to the boil. Once it's come to the boil, we'll join you back again in a bit. Okay, as you can see, we've got a boil going now. Some of the onions have started to change colour, and they're cooking through. So, all going great. Right, into this, we're going to add 1.5 kilos or 3 pounds of sugar. Now, normally for bottling, I use white sugar, bottling, canning, whatever you want to call it. I use white sugar. With this, I don't mind the malty flavour that the raw sugar is going to bring, and that's what I normally have around the house anyway, so I'm going to add the raw sugar instead. So we'll get that in there, get it dissolving. Okay, and at this stage we want to bring the heat down to a simmer. You don't want to boil sugar because it's going to cause it to crystallize later. Okay, and last we're going to add in the Ezy Sauce, which is that Wild's Ezy Sauce. Now this contains the food acid, it contains the flavorings and everything. Has a really clove sort of smell to it, and as you notice on here, it's got an acid warning on it, including do not induce vomiting, meaning that it's a very high acid. So unlike putting a vinegar in, which vinegar does not have an acid warning, even the double strength that I have, this is actually much higher acid concentration than vinegar. So that little bottle helps to acidify the whole thing, meaning it helps it to keep a whole lot better. All right, now we need to let this simmer, and it needs to simmer away for 2 hours. Basically want to reduce it down to a thicker sort of mixture. So I'll see you again in 2 hours. That's all cooked down nicely. Now you want to make sure that you keep it moving during that simmering so it doesn't catch the bottom, especially in a thin sort of pan like this one. Just want to keep it moving around. All right, now the last step is just the thickening up and final flavouring. Now part of this, we're going to use some old Aussie staples, which is Keen's mustard. That's an English style mustard, so fairly warm mustard, and Keen's curry powder. So we have a tablespoon of corn flour, a tablespoon of mustard, tablespoon of curry, 2 teaspoons of just plain turmeric. So I'm just going to add some water to these and make up a thin paste, and then that's going to head into here. So there we are, nice thin paste, and we're just going to constantly stir it while we tip that in. We're just going to let that simmer again, and going to be for about 10 minutes this time, just to let those flavors go through and let that corn flour help to thicken it up slightly. And it's only a tablespoon, so it's not going to have a major thickening effect, but it will help to just solidify the liquid a little bit. So 10 minutes later, well, actually a little bit more, but you can see that all the liquid's nicely incorporated. See how thick it is, and the wooden spoon sits on top, it's not diving down into it. Alright, now we are going to jar it up, and I'm going to do a couple of things that would give the USDA conniptions, but I don't live in America, so I don't need to follow USDA rules. To start with, some of the jars I'm going to use are recycled jars. Now, I've got absolutely no problem using recycled jars. I've used them since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. If you have a look, here's the lid off a recycled jar. And if you look at the rubber seal that it's got on it, it's a lot thicker than the rubber that's on modern canning jars. So you can get multiple uses out of it. In the old days, they used to have the actual rubber seal that you took off, washed, and put it back on. You can use a seal again. So I'm using recycled jars as part of it. We've always done that. I grew up doing that, and most of the time nowadays, people who can will do that for ones they're giving away. That way they're not giving away their good jars. You know, the only time you give away the good jars is to someone else that cans, so they will give you back a jar. The other thing I'm doing that I don't think USDA would agree with is I'm hot packing. So all I'm doing is packing it in the jars hot. They're not going into a water bath, they are not going into a pressure canner. Now, the reason I can do this is the jars are all nice and sterile, the lids are all nice and sterile, the implements I'm using are all nice and sterile. So everything's nice and sterile. A little bit more. And the heat that's in there actually causes the air to come up, and because liquids and air expand when they are hot, when it cools down it will seal it down. And as per anything else, if it's not sealed down tomorrow, then I know it hasn't got a good seal on it. So in that case, you can then think about doing a water bath on it, you know, or that one becomes your one in the fridge, the one that you're going to use. So I'll go through and fill all these up. And some of them in my new jars with new lids and everything all good like that. And some are recycled jars. You know, I've done this for many, many years. I've eaten pickles that were a couple of years old. You know, not a problem in the world. You'll notice I've still got the heat going because I want it nice and hot as it goes into the jar, so that way it's going to form that seal. All right, well, I'm going to keep going and pack all these and join you again in a bit. Okay, next day, all cooled down. Now, what I will do, because it hasn't been in a water bath or a pressure canner, is go around and with some hot water on a cloth is clean all the jars down. So just to make sure all the jars are clean. Normally they clean off when you put them in the water bath or the pressure canner. It'll clean the outside of the jars, but doing it this way, it doesn't happen. So I just got to clean them off. But as you can see, hot packing them, all the seals have gone down, including the ones on the reused jars. Absolutely not a problem in the world, Tom. All right, now this one here, a little reusable lid. Oh, there's that pickle mix. So, looking pretty good. And this works excellent with the cheese. So, a cheese pickle, ham cheese pickle sandwich, absolutely delicious. Yep, and that is the taste from my childhood right there. All right, thank you very much for watching, everyone, and bye for now.